Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this edition of The Inside. I am Bable Jonathan. Maritime insecurity, a major problem in the Gulf of Guinea, now described as the most dangerous maritime area in the world. Countries of the Gulf of Guinea, Ghana, Liberia, Ivory Coast, Benin, Togo, Nigeria, Cameroon, Sao Tome and Principe, Equatorial Guinea and Gabon have been facing this threat for decades. Earlier this year, the United Nations Security Council expressed deep concern over the threat that piracy and international organized crimes or transnational organized crimes at sea in the Gulf of Guinea pose to international navigation, security, and sustainable development of states of the region. Hostage taking of seafarers, oil and cargo theft, illicit trafficking and diversion of arms, drug and human trafficking, illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing have continued downplaying safety at sea, economic growth and development of West and Central African states and neighbors. Ahead of the first maritime conference of the Economic Community of West African States, November 2022, we will be analyzing these challenges and other issues hindering the development of a sustainable blue economy in Central African states and, of course, the way forward. Meet our guest in some few seconds. Our guest today is young Patrice Lumumba, Polyvalent Navigation Officer, a certified inspector in the Container Transport Unit of the International Ships and Port Security, Certified Inspector of International Maritime Traffic Safety and Security, Senior Instructor, Port Works Development Program, International Labour Bureau of the International Labour Organization, Senior Instructor in Ocean Law, one of those who worked on the National Maritime Transport Policies of Cameroon, member of the Interministerial Committee for the Restructurization of the Maritime Transport Sector of Cameroon, Secretary General of the Cameroon Seafarers Professional Trade Union. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Senior Journalist Babila Jonathan. I'm so delighted and grateful for you having made it possible for me to come to this platform and edify stakeholders of the maritime industry as well as youth, both young boys and girls who aspire and have a vocation to pick up a trade or a career in the maritime industry, which is still flooded by foreigners. We need them to embrace a career and have adequate training so as to take over from these foreigners who continue to come and make more of their lives and money here than they, nationals. Thank you very much.
Right. The Gulf of Guinea is today described as the most dangerous maritime area in the world because of the high rate of insecurity prevailing in this area. What's your analysis of this high rate of insecurity in the Gulf of Guinea?
Thank you for that pertinent question. I think it's not, I will first of all say, it seems, I will not say the UN, but to an extent, they should not dramatize it. Because before the Gulf of Guinea, we had the Gulf of Aden, we had the Straits of Malacca in Asia, which was worse than this. Today, the challenges are there, but if only member states of the Economic Community of Central African states, they work in synergy, they are sincere to themselves, honest, I am sure we will be able to curb this dilemma. It's the dilemma that cannot be handled by one nation, because the pirates, we realize after our investigations, pirates are not illiterates, as people may think. Some of them, most of them are literates, and some of them even navigators. They master the sea. You can't imagine the kind of boats they use to go and hijack big tankers in the high sea, as well as even coming into our channels, into our terminals to pick up crews. So we just need to work together. And there is one thing I will say the states have neglected. We must educate the populations of the coastal areas. Those besides the rivers, the sea, and the islands. If you go in most of our islands in the littoral and the southwest region, you find that it is flooded with foreigners. Who are they? And I call upon the youth. The government has tried to encourage them, putting even means, but most of our youth, they are running away from picking up careers there as local fishermen and other aspects. We need to educate our population. We need to educate all those working at sea, which means whether you are a canoe paddler, you have a canoe with a paddle, a canoe with an engine, all these populations need to be educated, trained, and even given some minor equipment. The chiefdoms, the chieftaincies must be empowered in terms of communication. You see on the 25th and 26th, during the second preparatory workshop for this first maritime conference in ECAS, one of the chiefs raised that point, that a sub-chief will work for 4 hours, rushing to come and tell him that he has been attacked by an underworld person, simply because he didn't have adequate communication equipment.
We'll definitely talk more about how to come out of this situation of insecurity prevailing in the Gulf of Guinea later in this program. But I want us to understand first the threat, to diagnose the threat that is the prevailing in the Gulf of Guinea. Hostage taking of seafarers, oil and cargo theft, illicit trafficking and diversion of arms, drug and human trafficking, illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing. What are the factors, the enabling factors that contribute to the prevailing situation?
Once more, thank you. The enabling factors are: one, the various administrations intervening in the maritime industry. Those responsible. Let me take fishing. Our fishing industry is full of illicit fishing contributed by ourselves. You will see somebody who had a fishing agreement since 1970. He has no vessel. But the foreigners who come to Cameroon, he spent time renting those agreements to them in exchange of commissions. He doesn't care to know, is the vessel, is the fishing vessel in conformity with the national legislation of our country, and does it meet up the standard of our flag of immatriculation, because Cameroon has an immatriculation flag, which is green, red, yellow. And once you register your fishing vessel under that flag, you must comply to the rules and regulations binding our water territories as well as the international waters. Nextly, the fishing sector, the seamen working there have not been chanced to be subjected to obligatory training, STCWF, which is Standard Training Certification of Washkeeping for Fishing, like those working in the cargo ships, in the tankers, and in the tugboats. Our administration is struggling to make that possible. And then our borders security system, we need to update them. I can't say they were not existing, but we need to update them to the modern technology today. Then, other aspects, as I likely said, we ourselves, we have contributed. You'll be surprised, senior journalists. Some few years ago, I think 6 or 7, one of the ministers of animal breeding, fisheries, and animal industry, through a partnership, enabled our fishing port to have a satellite room where you can monitor all activities of fishing in our waters, even the local fishermen. But today, if you go there, they can't tell you what went wrong. That satellite room is not.
I was going to ask you what has happened to that infrastructure that was put in place to check these issues of piracy and rest on the sea.
Exactly. Then, nextly, there is a law of the very ministry that imposes all fishing boats. We have an instrument that you put on your vessel so that when you go at sea, it facilitates the satellite center to locate, to see, are you fishing according to the norms or ethics? Are you using the right net? Because the worst thing is they fish our products and we cannot eat the good products. They sell it in the high sea, which is against the law. You have to bring all the products in the port. We check them before you export them. So partly the various administration, you know, when something begins slowly and you don't counter it, it keeps on growing. At a given time too, the fishing sector in Cameroon has been flooded by foreigners, Lebanese, Greeks, Nigerians who came with their vessels here. And today the government has done all to encourage nationals. Even the Chinese, they are one of the worst who are destroying our subsea fauna without any respect of the norms and ethics. So, in terms of piracy, as you rightly said, we ourselves, as I said it, we wanted to know the genesis. Most of our islands are flooded by foreigners who come here for their interests. They don't care about the country in which has hosted them and which they are living.
About the monitoring system
Yes.
that was put in place by one-time Minister of
Fisheries.
and Animal Industries.
Yes.
What's happened to it? Is it not effective anymore?
It's no more effective. It was not even effective for the following 3 years after the installation. Then another problem is there. We have our base of Génie Militaire who also have a center, a satellite center, which also has a satellite center that is supposed to be watching at all what is happening in our seas. The Maritime Administration, the Search and Rescue Center is not yet operational, not due to the Maritime Authority's fault. The equipments are not up to date. They need to be changed to meet the standard. So normally, we should not have one center. We should be able to have multiple centers that will be watching 24 hours round all the activities that are taking place in our port. And today, I think the National Shippers Council in Cameroon has put a system in place where as senior journalists, you can monitor your container from China to Cameroon, from Japan to Cameroon, and vice versa. Except you don't want, because all these services sometimes you must pay for. And those who don't do that, they sometimes find themselves in this situation where their goods have been stolen, hijacked. And sometimes they are not honest too. If you put the wrong address on your container, it might likely land somewhere else. That is why we are always insisting to them, give the right information, nothing else than the right information. Experience has proven up to date that most of the businessmen, senior journalists, will not like. That is why most of the ports have been modernized, and they have instruments that can see through the container. So you can almost tell like that this container has this, whereas it has something else. So,
is it the same thing prevailing in the other countries of the Gulf of Guinea, Ghana, Liberia, Ivory Coast, Benin, Togo, Nigeria, Sao Tome and Principe?
It's the same thing. It's the same thing prevailing in most of these countries. You look at Ghana, Ivory Coast, Senegal, Liberia, they are advanced to a certain level, but yet these problems still remain. Why? Because we'll come to, as you rightly said, we'll come to propositions, solutions. Yeah.
And so when this is happening, what are the reactions? What are the reactions from the authorities? We know that some meetings have been organized here and there. Recently, one took place here in Douala in preparation for the first maritime conference of the Economic Community of West African States. But on the ground,
yes,
what is being done as a response to this threat? Is it just the deployment of security forces, security and defense forces on the territorial waters of Cameroon and the other countries?
I will say it's not just the deployment of the specialized forces called upon to intervene in situations of piracy, terrorism, and theft. There is one major problem we have, maybe you'll be edified there again. To palliate these acts, Cameroon is yet to come out with a code for crimes committed at sea. I will tell you, senior journalists, that in Cameroon up to date, we don't have in our penal code the laws to penalize anybody who is arrested for piracy at sea, for terrorism. They use some part of the articles of the National Merchant Navy Code, Merchant Navy Code, that's Paris Marchand, to do so. Whereas,
what about the anti-terrorism law?
The anti-terrorism law is not applied to the. It's not applied to the terrorists at sea. It's mostly applied to those in the land. That's why recently they had a meeting. The Ministry of Justice, they are trying with UN partners to see how Cameroon will come out with a definite code for sanctions and condemnations on crimes committed at sea, because you have to high sea robbery. We have that. People could surprise a vessel or a boat carrying passengers and goods and seize their goods, seize their money and everything on them and go them away. You cannot be using the law of the land to condemn those kind of people. Their condemnation is always different, and it must be severe so as to discourage others not to go that way.
Do you have any specified information on the identity of the pirates? Are they nationals or foreigners, people coming from, because earlier you said there are people who are intelligent, there are people who master the sea, who have some knowledge of how things operate on the sea.
Yes. To confirm your question, they are mixed. You hardly see pirates from one nationality, except in a particular zone, like in the Gulf of Aden. You mostly see Somalians. But in other parts, like in the Gulf of Guinea, let me take the situation in our own sub-region. It's hardly one national. And since they are intelligent, as I said, knowledgeable, when they get somewhere, like in an island or in a coastal area, they penetrate the population. And most of them sometimes been in misery because of 5,000 francs, because of 10,000 francs. Somebody will release an information to an unknown person without trying to find out who is this person asking for this kind of information, not knowing that the pirate is requiring information so as to prepare their attacks on the vessels that are passing around the island, around that coastal area.
All right. Now we want to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week. Immaculate Fogwe takes us to the newsstands. This is Press Review.
Eco Outlook. Cameroon's far north faces devastating floods. Over 40,000 persons affected. The Post says Cameroon in economic turmoil. From bread, now cooking oil and gas prices skyrocket. Switching to fuel or wood will enhance climate change. Municipal updates reports to curb domestic gas scarcity in Boya, government supplies over 1,000 bottles. According to the Herald Tribune, euphoria across Mamfe and Kalik parishes following the release of 5 priests, a Reverend sister and 3 lay Christians. The Horizon questions who were the real abductors of the Mamfe priest and Christians. Cameroon Echo says Professor Juma prefers 10 states to 2-state federation. He was speaking during an outdoor program at CRTV Southwest region. The Median questions if the Special Criminal Court, SCC's rope, can drag Ferdinand Gongo, Secretary General at the presidency. Municipal updates. Northwest mayors accused of witch-hunting staff for opposing political views. Another edition of the Garden Post says Dr. Fomio Christopher recounts role in impacting democracy in Africa. Cameroon Tribune says Cameroon Oscars committee embroiled in credibility fracas. Eden Musonge's commission takes bilingualism to councils. The Garden Post cites the names of Kylian Mbappé, Aurelien Chouameni, Youssoufa Makoko, Bella Kochap, Bril Mbolo, and Yvan Vogo, who are of Cameroon descent and will play for other nations for the 2022 World Cup to be played in Qatar. Until next week, this is Press Review.
Thank you, Immaculate Fogwe, for Press Review. Young Patrice Lumumba, what are the direct consequences of this prevailing insecurity in the Gulf of Guinea on the economy?
The prevailing consequences and effects are far-reaching because ship owners do not like anyone to charter their ship to an area that has been demarked as an unsafe zone, an area of piracy and terrorism, because they will spend more if the cruise and the vessels is captured. The tendency is that the ransoms these people require are enormous. And I will tell you, some ship owners have made it clear to their marketing section, no charterer chartering my vessel to destination Gulf of Guinea, no. So you see, it kills business, it scares investors. And when investors do not come, it will be difficult for us to develop our blue economy.
Right. So what are the other issues hindering the development of the blue economy in the Central African or in the Gulf of Guinea, member states of the Gulf of Guinea? What are the other issues, the other problems apart from insecurity?
Apart from insecurity, I think The other problem is that our economic community of Central African states, we need to harmonize. That's one of the topics we had in these 2 days reflection in preparation of the first Maritime Conference. We have to harmonize our legislation and judicial system. We have to have a permanent follow-up committee in all the various domains: fishing, international navigation, cargo, liquefy, petroleum industries, because there too we have some lapses. We realize we just have some lapses. Earlier, at the beginning of our program, I tried to tell you about the situation in the Gulf of Aden and in the Straits of Malacca, as between Indonesia down the South Pacific. But today it has been successfully eradicated because we need to work in collaboration. We need to harmonize our legislation. We need a permanent follow-up committee. We need a modern communication system.
So there's a problem of at the level of the legislations that are not harmonized.
Yes, they are not harmonized.
Legislations in the different countries of the sub-region. And then an issue of
communication.
Follow-up.
Yes, communication and follow-up. Then capacity building in this field, it's permanent. It's per trimester, semester, and year. It's not an issue of after 1 year, because it's a complex industry. The pirates and the terrorists, they don't sleep. Once the government forces, they come out with good strategies. Those two, on the other side, they go and work and find out how they can counter these strategies. And to some areas, they try to have modern equipment to dictate and to see from afar.
Seafarers seem to be facing a lot of challenges in the discharge of their duties that is also contributing to hinder or to slow down the development of a blue economy in the Central African sub-region.
Yes, that one, it's clear. The seafarers are victims, especially in the fishing boats, which are not too big, and they are easily attacked by these pirates and terrorists, harassed, monies taken. In short, they just loot the vessel, and sometimes if they can carry out the harvest from the fishing, if they can take it as much as possible, they don't hesitate. And the consequence is that if a ship owner in the fishing industry, which has 2 vessels or 1, is victimized once, twice, thrice, the tendency is that he might be discouraged, except he has a very, very firm and stern mind. He might be discouraged. Even somebody who has more than 2, 3, 4 vessels, and not limited to the fishing industry, even the cargo ships. If a ship owner's vessels come into the Gulf of Guinea and his crew team is picked up and his vessel too picked up, it's a problem. Even if he has 10, 15 vessels, the tendency is that he might likely decide not to charter his vessels to destination Africa.
Right. I talked to a seafarer recently who was highlighting some issues that have to do with poor working conditions. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. That's one aspect too that enables the seamen to give in to the proposals of the enemy, who are the pirates and even the terrorists. I always say this, senior journalists, if you want somebody to be jealous of his job, I will not say give him the maximum, give him the minimum and the basic advantage. Which are these basic advantage? Anybody working who is sure that every month his pension and our benefits is being contributed, his family allowance is passing. He has a good sick insurance. When school are returning, he can have a loan to register his children in school. He can even have a loan to buy a land and build a house. And then in the company, you have to develop that dialogue, social dialogue, which is not more really existing among the employers and the workers. Today in Cameroon, I assume my words, the civil society, as a trade unionist, are considered more of rivals, enemy, than the social partners. The union is not there to push the worker to mistakes or error. Instead, the union is there to educate the worker to know his rights towards the employer and to know his rights, what the employer has as a right to him as a worker, as well as the state. So, these seafarers, they themselves, they too are a problem. Because even those who are in unions, like us, every month we try to organize, we try to bring them, we choose a topic to talk on, maybe
trainings?
Yes, training.
Refresher courses?
Yes, refresher courses. That's one of the main role, task, duty and responsibility of a union. But I will tell you, senior journalists, when this guy they come back from sea, they'll prefer to sit in a snack, drink from 6 to 6. When you tell them, they say no. But once they have a major problem, maybe he has been fired after having obtained maybe 3 requests for justification of a mistake, or he has been abused. That is when they come to the union and they expect the union to do magic. Sometimes they even expect the union to play the role of the state. The state has its role. It's not up to the union to go and ratify conventions. Recently, the Maritime Administration and the present minister, sincerely, they have tried their best. They are doing a lot for many changes to come into this industry, considering the seamen and even the dockers. If you remember, from the 19th to the 26th of September 2022, the first audit of IMO was done in Cameroon since independence. Something that had never happened, even when Cameroon had 5 state fishing companies and a big company like Cameroon Shipping Lines. That was a big school. All the administrations intervening in the maritime sector went through. Formerly, audit was facultative. Today it has become obligatory. Now that Cameroon has entered into it, from time to time they will be coming to check if the corrective measures they realize on the field and propose to the government to do these corrections has been done. And to add to, that is what encourages investors will not hesitate to come and invest in a country where norms, ethics, deontology, philosophy, and standards are being respected. But one of the things our seafarers too do not understand is that our administration has not been empowered. Our administration, should be sincere, senior journalists, has a major problem. It has a major structural problem that should be remedied. You don't expect an administration to bring solution to its subjects when it's in itself it has a structural problem. And this structural problem, when we come to the solutions, I will give you what has to be done for that administration to really be empowered.
Right. In one of your presentations, you said that the issues hindering and delaying the development of a sustainable blue economy is central, or are central in Central Africa, are political, administrative,
yes,
technical,
yeah,
and professional.
And
You talked about the professional, the technical, and the administrative, the political. What are the issues hindering the development of a blue economy in the political perspective?
Thank you once more. The political aspect is that I simply realize that in Central Africans, the politicians, they prioritize politics over economy. And sometimes, most of the time, you need to counsel or expose one, twice, thrice, and even when you back your arguments with tangible proofs, they don't seem to take it in consideration. I will give you a good example of what the blue economy stands for. Then, with your permission, I would like our auditors to know what is blue economy. Blue economy is a new concept, different from the formal concept the AU had, African Union, strategies on maritime transport in Africa. It came because the heads of state of Africa realized that in the strategy of maritime transport in Africa, the population of the coastal areas, the island, even of the hinterlands, who are direct neighbors of this coastal area, were not taken into consideration in the development of this industry. The blue economy now has come as a new concept, putting at first the population of the coastal area, the islands, and even the direct hinterlands, neighboring regions or country. So that henceforth, all those coming to invest in the coastal area, be it a drilling company, being a port, being whatever project, the population should be the first to benefit, to enjoy the privileges and the advantages. In terms of infrastructures like schools, hospitals, training and employment for the youth, training the youth so that they are able tomorrow to take over from the foreigners who are coming with the reason that we don't have a labor force qualified for that. And you realize that
what is making it difficult for us in the Central African sub-region to have qualified labor in this domain?
Thank you once more. It depends on your national policy. When we come to the solution, I'll give you an appropriate answer. I will take an example in a small country like Equatorial Guinea. All the petroleum or shipping companies coming there, the national merchant code of their country, even Gabon and Congo Brazzaville, it is clear there that 75% of workers in all domains are nationals, and you have the obligation to train them. It is simple. Our Merchant Navy Code has gone for 50 years. It does not reflect the realities of today. It needs to be revised.
We don't have that in Cameroon?
We have a Merchant Navy Code, but it is...
I mean
the quota.
The quota.
The quota in Cameroon is exceptional. Exceptional in the fact that only on vessels that have been registered under Cameroon flag, the Maritime Authority has power to impose and to make sure that 75% of the crew are Cameroonian. But the few ones that are there, if you go down on the field, you will realize that even on those vessels flying Cameroon flag, majority of crews there are foreigners. You go to the oil field, the offshore field, you realize the same thing. I went through their National Collective Convention. Nowhere it is mentioned the quota or percentage of nationals that has to be employed. Our union even wrote to the Minister of Employment, who summoned a big meeting with SNH, ADAX, and all those big multinational companies that did not come for the meeting. And ironically, SNH was trying to speak on their mouth. We said, no, you are not their mouthpiece. The minister said they should be present here. Don't come and tell us that you are trying to, you are not trying. It should be in the collective bargaining convention of the oil field. of the fishing sector, of the international navigation sector, of the coastal navigation sector. Then moreover, you said something. Today in Cameroon, we have a lot of road accidents, because we want to do mass transportation by road, whereas God has imbued and endowed Cameroon with inland waterways that these goods can be transported. I give you a simple example, Mr. Babila. We have 5 cement companies in Cameroon based in Douala, but there is no Cameroonian that has a vessel that transports cement from Douala to Limbe, Chico, Mundemba, Kribi, Campo. The consequence is what? Trailers must be flooding all our small boats, the highways. So there is a problem too on that sector. There is no legislation put in place by the would-be authority for internal navigation. It scares Cameroonians to invest in internal navigation, but it's a rich sector that can create even employment and boost the development of our blue economy.
All right, after interviews of the week, we'll take a look at the way forward. We'll talk more about how to come out of this unpleasant situation.
Journalism practice is not static. It evolves. And the bottom line is that the new ICTs, information communication technologies, have also pushed the boundaries and expanded the frontiers of journalism practice. To put quality into the journalism landscape today, there are a lot of things we are doing right, because I believe in hope, but there are also a lot of things we are doing wrong.
Things like hate speech.
Hate speech is very, very prominent, especially within the context of Cameroon today.
Now, what explains the fact that today this phenomenon of hate speech is fast growing and spreading like wildfire in the audiovisual, the print media, and even on social media and so on?
It has to do with cleavages and interests. Hate speech is psychological, it's sociological, it's economic. You've acquired a certain amount of wealth or power, and it's difficult for you to say, I want to let it go. And therefore, mechanisms to protect, to conserve, to preserve either your economic interests or your power interests, you can generate and go into this hate speech track. And hate speech, as I said the other Tuesday, some scholars say it's words that kill. It's aversion. Probably you don't even have something to offer, but you rally your family, your tribe, your village, your region, and to say it is the best and the rest are not good. Sometimes you claim patriotism, you claim sanity, you claim you are right, you have a fixed mindset, and you want to spread it and impose it on others. Hate speech is very dangerous. You know examples of hate speech around the world. I've got it, both hate speech and hate media content.
Another problem, Prof, seriously affecting the practice of journalism in Cameroon today is fake news.
Yes.
And this is fast growing with the growing phenomenon of citizen journalists, where just everybody wants to become a journalist, wants to publish pictures, videos, information, sometimes fake.
Yes. It's very worrisome. It's not only in Cameroon, it's all over the world. But we can draw inspiration from other places where this fake news is very, very prominent. Fake news is a function of what? Scoops, deadline pressures, even evil intentions to manipulate. All of them come into fake news. Do we have a parallel organization? Do we have parallel organizations that give us correct facts about what fake news sends out? They showed there was a certain picture I just saw it. A woman was trying to, a black woman, maybe in America, was trying to do fundraising for her business. In the process, they used of a white man and to put on a cheek. You have to have that capability to differentiate, to see that, because pictures
cross-check.
Yes, a cross-check. And some people might say, no, it's too abstract. No, it takes a very little effort to cross-check. This man is dead. Actually, in Africa, nobody takes information, what they call broadcast information, whether it's radio, television, and now with internet, without checking from the neighbor. It is something I've done in communication research. You have heard that this thing has happened. Just check. Just do something. You see, it goes to the next door neighbor. I've just heard a certain death. Did you hear it? Or some information comes in a very fleeting manner. You did not hear well. The last name you heard was Tanjong. You go to your neighbor. There is a Tanjong that they have just announced in Luncheon Day. Did they give the second name? That is how to check, to cut down. It's very simple, eh?
But the issue, Prof, is that while you, the professional, you're cross-checking, the guy who is on the street has already put it on Facebook, on Twitter, he has put it, it's on the internet already. And now how to counter the lies that have been published when you have the truth?
This is what you do. There is always room for comment, like or dislike. You know, when you see those, when you have that platform or what you call a template. If, for example, you solve, you should be able to say this is a lie, and people will pick up from that. I see it a lot on the net, on Facebook. Somebody says something, okay, like reporting casualties. Somebody will say 10 or 20 died. Some other person I said no. From what we saw in the hospital, 5, not 10. You understand? That is we. My concern is that we are not going to eliminate fake news like we are doing, or like but we must develop a system that has the capacity to differentiate, to shift from fake news to
fast cross-checking.
Right. It is happening. 2 minutes after the President of America speaks, there is checking facts. Oh, he said it was 100 million, but this thing was 100 million. This was $20 million. That is one way. There are many other ways. Here in Cameroon, where interpersonal communication is still very strong, it's a strength, it's not a weakness. You have your next door neighbor, check, or a friend, check. I get some information sometimes. I have to check with a brother of mine who works. But I still use the technology. Hey, you have heard this? He works in Ombe, and he said, no, okay, this is not. That is checking and cross-checking.
No, but what explains the flow of this fake news from the social media, from the internet, into the traditional media, that is the print and the audiovisual?
Yes.
Most often, some media organs would pick up the fake news and flush it out.
You know, it's hunger, it's lack of knowledge and skills, and lack of anticipating or expecting the impact of that information. The difference between you and the journalism will still continue, because you go through news processing. At the end of the day, you gather, you process, you take all the parameters to process information, then you move it to dissemination. That's classic journalism, isn't it? But with fake news, it jumps the queue. But if you go through that normal process, at the end of the day, you win. Even though you have
fake news leaps from
just gathering, or not even gathering. They don't even gather. They just publish.
No
so
treatment.
It doesn't go through the classic journalism training that we've given you guys. That you go through gathering, you process, you take the elements of news, prominence, that proximity, you consider all of them, and then go to disseminate.
There is this problem of the mad rush for scoop.
Yeah,
that seems to be favoring the spread of fake news.
Yeah, but when the scoop comes out and people read and say the headline does not tie with the body, they switch off. This is true. It's just a very dangerous headline. I know, maybe Fortabe is gone or whatever. Then you come down, it's a different story. There are a lot of people that cannot even sell their newspapers. Go and do trends and sales. They have to go through people to. Otherwise, we have you can optimize our market and go even if you produce quality. So information must have quality. The fake news comes and goes. You check it through fact check. You check it through citizens organization publishing fake. Denouncing fake news. You check it through immunizing the population and yourself about that that kinds of news. You tell when you read a story, check. I did a study in 1994. We found out that people go to international media because of the fake news. Fake news is not really the fake news that we have been generating locally. It's not credible. They hear something about Jonathan, and they said, let me check from BBC, let me check from this. Is part of trying to reduce
the spread of fake news.
Yes.
It's better to not to have the scoop
Yes.
than to have a scoop and it's a fake news.
Absolutely.
All right, Prof, earlier you mentioned the issue of training.
Yeah.
And you are the founder and the pioneer head of Department of Journalism and Mass
Yes.
Communication in the
Yes.
University of Boya,
Mm-hmm.
a department that you set up, you brought it up, and you left it at a certain standard.
Yes.
When you look at the GMC that we have today and the GMC that you left, what do you think?
Thanks. Let me not suffer from the sociological phenomenon which says mine is best or my generation is best. But let me tell you, GMC to me is a passion. It's in my DNA. I spent minimum 24 years with GMC. The vision, about 3 days ago, I was having a social with the former students. One of them said that the program we designed gave them the latitude to go out and get jobs in all spheres of communication. We introduced PR, public relations, research, print journalism, broadcast journalism, television journalism. This is broad-based in 3 years. And the children were heavily, we gave them the best. The idea at that time, and it's still on because the girl gave a testimony, is that when you go out, you'll be able to feed yourself in one sector or the other, corporate world or public world, which is government. And there's testimony to that, and it has worked. Because I have my former students both in the corporate world and the governmental world, or call it public world. Radio.
Public service.
Public service. Go to CR3. Anglophone desk. The people that make it JMC can tell you this. Go to the come to Douala. We're in Douala. Check. If you see people like all the kids you see, the statistics is that sometimes I sit in my little corner in my house. Out of the 11 people who anchor luncheon day, sometimes 10 are former JMC from the provinces. Sometimes the anchor here on the JMC. I am very proud and happy. I spent 12 years plus not only conceptualizing but implementing the JMC program. I paid dearly. Pay my career, my global career, my family, etc. But the good news, because I live on hope, is that JMC is strong. I would be very careful because they're changing hands the last 1 year or something.
Yes,
but
the
some of the
is now headed by
the news coming to me now. The news coming to me now, as much as I want to keep cool, it pukes me. JMC is not for sale. To go to JMC, you had 9, 10 points. It was not accident, it was deliberate, because 500 students were applying to come to JMC. How do you scientifically take 100 or 50? You go through their performance at the A level. A is 5 points, B is 4, C is 3, D is 2, E is 1. You can have 5 A levels and all E's, that's 5 points. But there's a kid with 3 A levels, 3 A's, multiplied times 5. Is that not 15 points? That means their entry level gives you the leverage that your predictive validity, I mean, that means your ability to go out will be very high, even to go out with a quality degree. And that has been happening. The failure rate was very low, was just about 5%. The facts are there.
And the failure rate today is
rising. I hear that there's madness. When you bring people with 2 E's, I have nothing against 2 E's. What do you expect? You don't even create the enabling environment for the kids. I was watching something.
But the post that you handle, that is the head of department, is today in the hands of one of your sons. I want to put it that way.
Yes.
One of your academic sons,
right.
Dr. Leon Galangange.
Yes.
What is happening?
What happens in human history? Everybody brings his own aura, his own vision to the post. The post is the position is a function of what you bring into it. Whatever position you have, that young man, I think it's about a year or something, so I will not be too quick. But I require the civil society, the consumers of GMC, to start making points about the quality of GMC. I'm not an end user. I was on the side of knowledge production. So it is you again, your organizations. How many GMC are here? But the other day I was one of the ex-students of GMC, a very big man in Yaoundé. He says the quality of the intents now is not something to write home, and therefore there's something going on in terms of the quality. But we must live on hope.
What could be that?
The quality has to do with individual commitment in terms of the trainers, and it has to do with the enabling environment, and it has to do with things like the entry level, because quality is a function of many things. Quality byproduct. So you have to have the scientific mind to look at and do partials. How much is high entry level bringing into quality? How much is the enabling environment? Let me give you an example.
What is the
enabling environment? For example, they were talking about Finland has the best educational system in the world, and the statistics is that for every classroom, primary school, there are minimum 3 teachers in Finland. You understand? They have the highest score in maths. Finland, 5 million population people. They have the best educational system in the world. When you go to JMC and you have 300 students in a class, when I ran JMC, I stood firm. I'm not interested in quantity, welfare. I'm interested in quality so that they can go and make impact. I knew every kid to the placenta where the placenta was buried.
What's your relationship like with the present HOD?
No, I don't have any relationship.
Are you advising your son?
No, excuse me. I have developed what I call progressive disengagement. I have a few years to go. For about 7 years ago, I put out this concept, progressive disengagement. It's meant to guarantee continuity. It's meant to guarantee quality. Progressive disengagement. And the more you project yourself a lot, the more you handicap people from coming out with their creative potential. So you have to disengage. And that is what I'm doing. I am progressively disengaging so that everybody takes his historical responsibility.
Professor Eno Tanjong, you are one of Africa's best communication experts. How can this tool, which is very important, be used by the stakeholders, the authorities of this country, to find a way out of the deepening crisis in the Northwest and Southwest regions?
All right. it starts with the self. Communication says, in communication theory or scholarship, communication starts with the self. That means all the stakeholders, politicians, academics, media practitioner organizers, they must start by fine-tuning their own communication skills within themselves. That's what we call intrapersonal communication. What do you want to say? How do you want to say it? That's the first point. So you process the information and you go about that. The second one is one of the tragedies of our time. Communication is listening. People don't listen. People don't listen. Communication. So you must learn how to listen in communication. I have watched debates across this country. I cried. We have spent 15 years winning debates on newspapers, television, radio airwaves, television screens. Debates, you win. I say I've won. I'm very pedantic. My point is the best. Winning debates. When you go to the ground, nothing. That is not where I'm coming from. The way forward is for you to process your communication well. If you are a politician, know that anything that comes out of your mouth takes minimum 100 years to be people to forget. It's even more dangerous now because with the technology, retrieval storage technology is very powerful. You even disown. People have disowned their own speeches when they are caught. So you have to process that information in yourself. When you go into a public arena or discourse, listen. Communication is not divergence, it's convergence. Listen to my vision or my version. I listen to yours and I say, where do we meet? Where do we go apart? Where do we disagree to agree?
Now, as the crisis continues deepening with thousands of persons who are now internally displaced,
IDPs.
They are in other parts of the country, some are in the bushes, some are even in neighboring Nigeria, and the rate at which people are leaving the northwest and the southwest regions to other parts of the country is even increasing as we talk now. And there is communication coming from the two parties or the two sides of this crisis. I'm talking about the government and of course the those who are fighting for the restoration of the independence of the former Southern Cameroons. How to manage these two? What are the two parties expected to do? Who is expected to do what? As far as communication is concerned?
Honestly, the two parties should listen to each other. If you have an enclaved mind, you get it wrong. Very prominent people have been asking for inclusive dialogue, that's inclusive communication. People are asking for you journalists to do peace communication. What is peace communication? You build blocks for people to start feeling, yes, my point counts or my vote counts. Once people don't have that in their psyche, it damages their psyche permanently, becomes a scar, and they drift. We need responsibility. We have responsibility as communication people. Some of these things have happened in other worlds of world. And let me add, after everything, after the differences, we end up on communication. No war has ever ended without people going to the conference table to say, let's talk. When you say let's talk, it's communication, isn't it?
Practically impossible if the two parties cannot listen to each other.
It's what we call obtrusive experience. There's difference between a phenomenon very far. You just look. Let me give you an example. HIV/AIDS. When it came, it was very far. It was America. It was this. It was this. But when neighbors, relatives, brothers, sisters, father, mother started dying of HIV/AIDS, that what we call obtrusive experience. People started, hey, that that HIV/AIDS is true, look at the disaster we're having. As I'm sitting here, I have obtrusive experience of what's going on. My village is in, I don't want to call the word bush, we call it etem. Etem means bush house. Fortabe is not people who have gone. One of my brothers had a malaise and died. We have to talk, we have to listen to each other.
But when we look at the state of things today, we notice that on one hand, there is a fixed position. This is what I want. I don't want to hear any other thing. This is what I want. And on the other side, it's a taboo to talk about this thing that you're requesting for. So how can things work in this kind of
Humanity requires convergence. It requires give and take. You understand? If you take your kids in the house, you have two kids. One is this, one is this. You as a father, you start bringing. I believe that the conference that Cardinal Toomey and
Dr. Simon Munzo,
yes, and Dr. Munzo and the rest of the civil society, everybody is involved. Do you see the pictures of women crying, weeping in Bamenda and Boya? That is part of civil society. We have come to have a direct experience with it. Those who are adamant, who are living in ACs and the rest. Like when I went here, the workshop was in a 5-star hotel, AC, lot of suits. Those are living in an abstract world. It is coming. There are people now that have 20, 30 people in their houses in Douala Yaoundé. Anglophones. You understand? Francophones, their neighbors. When we start having these experiences, there will be a time we'll say, let us sit down and talk. That is communication. Don't tell me that it's my own version of Cameroon or vision of Cameroon is the best. Who told you that? It can take 10 years. It goes out of existence. Policies come and go. Economic booms come and recessions come. Happiness come, unhappiness. I am in a generation that has suffered so much. We're seeing the outcomes, but one day, because I live on hope. I'm not a pessimist. I live on hope. If I go before, pray for me. But those who come after, they will have better life. We should always, Obama said it, better. That word better. We should always pray, work on better, being better.
Now, young Patrice Lumumba, how do we come out of this? How can countries of the Gulf of Guinea come out of this unpleasant and unproductive situation of insecurity and other problems affecting business on the high sea, business on our territorial waters?
Thank you, Senior Journalist. Once more, the first point I will say, it has been proven that synergy pays. Working together, being honest, sincere, and exchanging the right information at the right time. Because in the maritime industry, if we are in a vessel, I hide an information from you, I'm putting the vessel in danger. So if you are in a region, you can't have a strong economic bloc. When you look at the West Africa economic bloc, their custom unions, they have one fare in all of our West Africa. Here, it's not the case. It doesn't encourage business. I talked of harmonizing our legislation at the sub-regional level. And before you have a good harmony, each member state must have its own national code. Taking in consideration those who are in the interland countries like Chad, Central Africa. When you go to Abidjan, you realize that in all their ports, Burkina Faso has a section, Mali has a section. It is the same thing we have to do here to promote countries of the hinterland.
So in the Douala port, for example,
Exactly.
there should be a section for Chad, which is an inland country.
Exactly.
There should be a section for the Central African Republic.
Exactly. Besides that, again, we should be able to exchange technology. If Cameroon is good in this field, sometimes the neighboring country, they might not have money to send their technicians or the administrator to the schools, because one of the key problems too in the maritime industry, training are very expensive, from basical to higher. You see, to go to a maritime university today is not less than 35 million per year. If you don't have to go for 2 years, it's 70 million. So most of the times, there are organizations taking in charge the candidates presented by our Minister of Transport. Then another aspect, I talked of it, communication. Communication network should be very, very, very efficient. So much so that we can exchange in less than 1 hour. The new technology has enabled it, whether through internet, through WhatsApp, through YouTube, there are a lot of means today. Our administrations should really go digital. Like the seafarers you were talking of, today we have a problem. There is a flood of fake licenses, fake certificates. And then you talked of a point, how to boost the blue economy. Let me show you how the seafarers can boost the blue economy. All seafarers going out to work out of Cameroon, they are paid in dollars, in euros. The ministries concerned should be in good synergy to make sure that any seaman living out Cameroon has an authentic contract validated by the Maritime Administration, has an account in a national bank, because all the salaries are sent directly there. He only gets allowances on the way to buy 1 or 2 things or to go out and enjoy himself. Imagine the dividend that the National Treasury will make and our local bank. I like to cite examples with Africa. When you look at Ghana, you look at Ivory Coast, you look at Senegal, you see the respect from the authority to the seafarers. It's simply because of the dividend the seafarers' labor force is bringing into the economy, into the blue economy of their country. You go to Asia, Philippines has nothing, but today it has a sound economy through their seafaring labor force they are selling outside. And they have extended it to all other labor. Any Filipino going out to work, be you a seafarer or not, your contract must be validated by your country. You must have an account in a local bank, and your salary all is sent there. Indonesia, India. So there is a lot to benefit, and by mutualizing our forces, communication is very important. And I talked of follow-up committee. Sometimes we come together just because there's a major situation.
There should be a committee constantly following up what is happening,
exactly,
the developments,
exactly,
the new things that are coming into play, and so on.
Not only wait for International Day of this, or before you. No, it should be we should develop the maritime culture. Thank you, senior journalist. We should promote the maritime culture, and the maritime culture requires that we don't only come together as stakeholders because there is an event. We should be able to come together every month. I've seen that in West Africa, in Ghana, in Ivory Coast. The stakeholders there, they don't joke. They have a room. And coming back to the workshop you were talking of, you realize that on the first day, you look for an expert who could brief you up to what is taking place, because
Exactly. We really had some challenges getting experts to talk to us about these issues on the
Ministry of Plan, Economy and Regional Development. They did not invite the experts, even the civil society. But thank God that the lady who presided the closing session said, we have taken note. And I have to point it here. The heads of state started working on this project on blue economy, blue ocean in 2017. And now that we are going to the finishing point, it is dangerous to put out the real actors of the sector, who are seafarers, dockers, stevedore, maritime experts, NGOs. If not, we might have a conference and at the end we'll not be able to come out with what our various states are expecting.
What happened? They were not invited or they didn't come?
They were not invited. So I, for instance, I just followed your news and I realized it, and then I called the coordinator of the organizing committee of that conference, because the people piloting it are Cameroonians. And then they said, no, you should be there in the morning. And when we reached there, it was even difficult. The interview was too much. I said, but I'm among the economic community of Central Africans best blue experts. We call it ECAS. Then I showed them on my phone. We have a forum. So we expected that at least. This is the second meeting. The first one took place on the 25th of June, 2022. This is the second. Any ministry or any para-etatic structure organizing anything in relation to that conference, I'm pleading, if you leave out the actors of that sector, our heads of state will not get the results they are waiting for.
Is this part of the manifestations of the uncordial atmosphere existing between the government authorities and the civil society? Because most of you, the experts of the civil society, were absent on day one.
Exactly. I'm confirming what you are saying. They should understand that we are not rivals or enemy. Everybody has a contribution to make for the building of our nation. And yet again, you talk on blue economy has a lot of aspects. If we regulate our fishing activities, both industrial and local, senior journalists, we stand a chance to create a lot of jobs and bring a lot of dividends to our economy. Most of the island, as I said, they are foreigners. All what they harvest, they dry, they transport and go and sell into their countries.
No, what about the working conditions of seafarers?
The working condition of seafarers, I said our present minister and the director of maritime affairs and inland waterway, when it is good to say it is good. For the 3 years they've been there, in fact, much has been done. I talk of the first ever audit of IMO in Cameroon, and this week, ending today, the U.S. Coast Guard, they came to check the facilities in our ports, Douala, Kribi, and Limbe is not yet. But I appreciate, because it's a school, when they come and do those checks, they give corrective measures. What they see lacking, they give you a proposal, a solution, so that when they go, you remember and you see how to do the correction. And also, we have some conventions. Our minister is, because in reality he's the maritime authority, he's a technician, but at the international level, it is the Minister of External Relations who submits those kind of files. The technical ministry submits the technical document, and the Minister of External Relations.
What should be done about the convention?
The convention should be ratified. Like the seafarers situation as we are talking, Cameroon is yet to ratify, has ratified 5 IMO conventions. SOLAS, safety of life at sea, MARPOL, marine pollution, STCW 2010, because it started from 98-95 to 2010. And then ratify the protocol of Cape Town in South Africa for the training of fishermen. Then the COLREC for nautical accidents, Cameroon has ratified that. And the fifth one is, we've talked of STCW, MARPOL, SOLAS, COLREC. The load line convention, a load line. You see sometimes we have accident because once stability is non-negotiable at sea. And then the last conventions we are waiting the state to ratify is the MSC 2006 Maritime Labour Convention. Those are ILO conventions. 185 on seafarers identification, 163 on seafarers welfare, and 188 training of obligatory training for fishermen.
Right. Young Patrice Lumumba, polyvalent navigation officer. Thank you so much for your time.
I am the one to give you particular and special thanks for having made it possible for us to edify stakeholders of our industry. They should learn to come each time the minister convokes a meeting. Most of them, they don't come. And where we are going, you cannot be an island. With the new technologies, you cannot run. Sooner or later, you'll be caught up. So the best is come and join hands for all to build a better blue economy for our country and for the future generation.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, dear viewers, for staying with us. That's it for today's edition of The Insight. Goodbye.